You are listening to hashtag Breaking the Myth by Psych Vigyan Network Nepal. We are a non-profit organization based out of Nepal that serves to advocate for mental health awareness. Through this podcast, we wish to break certain misconceptions that might surround the idea of mental health and its care, and hope to break some popular myths we often see in media. If you like this episode, share it with your friends or anyone else who might appreciate it. Hello, good morning, good evening, whatever time you are listening to this. Welcome back to hashtag Breaking the Myth podcast. This week's episode, we solve the mysteries of psychology. So you are here with your hosts with the most. My name is Ash. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology from Furman University, South Carolina. So I know a little bit about mental health. I've been passionate about it for quite a few years. I have a background as an undergrad, I did research in body image, childhood psychology. So I'm very interested in learning how we develop and grow as people. And I've lived in India as well as the United States. I also spent some time in Germany. So I'm very interested in how our identities are shaped by who we are and who we are as people. So that's a little bit about me. Kripadi, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, this is Kripa again with Aishwarya. So I'm Kripa Sigdal. I'm working as an academician and mental health counselor in Nepal. I am teaching psychology in university campus, and then I'm working as mental health counselor from the organization called Psych Vigyan Network Nepal. Mm-hmm.
All right, and that's the organization that sponsors this podcast. That's Psych Vigyan Network Nepal. We are on social media everywhere. If you are listening to this podcast, you probably already follow us. If you don't, we're on Instagram, we are on Facebook, and this podcast is available on Spotify, YouTube, and SoundCloud. So, Kripadi, we kind of came up with this topic, especially talking about psychology, because we wanted to break the myths around what people think about psychology as a subject. So not only to study, but what do we study in psychology? Like, what is this discipline? Because I think there's still a lot of confusion in the world about the importance of the subject and like what even we study. Do you have a simple explanation for people what psychology is?
So it is a scientific subject which studies about how our mental processes work. It studies about how our brain functions. Basically, if we have to define it, it is the scientific study of our mental processes and human behavior. So how a person feels things and behaves is studied through psychology.
Exactly. It's literally the study of human behavior. So how do we behave and interact with each other in society? And another important part of this, it is a scientific discipline. So a funny story, I guess, is when I was initially studying psychology in university, when I would come back home and my relatives would come up to me and they would ask me to read their hand. They would give me their hand and be like, "Can you tell me my future?" And, psychology is not, as much as I love astrology, psychology is not astrology. So studying human behavior, yes, can sometimes mean that you can predict that behavior by studying it. But the most important part is that it's scientific. So we actually do use data in a lot of our studies.
Yeah, exactly. I can relate to that, Aishwarya, because people used to come and then say, "What am I thinking?" If you can say, "What am I thinking?" by looking my face, then you are a psychologist. People used to tell those kind of things initially. So yes, we are not mind readers, we are not face readers, we are not hand readers, we are not astrologists. We use certain data, we use certain techniques and tools to observe, to get the idea that what a person is thinking. It basically, the analogy is like, we going to doctor, right? Whenever we enter the room, doctor is not going to say you have this cancer, you have this ulcer, you have this certain problem. They have to go through certain processes of testing through different kind of technology. So we use the same. We use various tools, various assessment tools, and then we also use our observation quality or skill, and and then we do say what's happening, or why the people behaving the way they do, or why the people thinking the way they do. So we use certain scientific data, and then on that basis, then we make prediction. So that is how it works. It does not work by just looking at the face, or just by looking at hands, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could look at a person and predict what they were thinking. That's a superpower I want.
Exactly.
That psychology has not fulfilled. It has not. It has not given me the superpower to read minds. But
it equips us with this quality of observation. So obviously, the people who are interested in psychology, or people who study psychology for a long time, they are good observant. So they can observe people and see, or they predict at least. But yes, we don't have superpower.
Exactly. And that's such an important point you bring up about observation. Is I think I get stuck in my mind so much because I've become such an observer, because that's what you're taught within psychology, is to observe and try to observe objectively. So when you look at somebody's behavior, to give a real life example, I guess what I've learned from psychology is, if I'm meeting someone, just on the street, or someone is rude to me, or someone says something mean to me, I will automatically not assume that it's my fault, because I know that the other person probably has things going on internally, in their life, or they might be having a bad day. So it's that kind of objective quality to observing other people's actions in your everyday life that psychology does teach you in its discipline.
True, very true. Even when people ask me what psychology gave back to you, I think being non-judgmental, that is the one essential quality that psychology gave it to me. So like you say, we become non-judgmental, and we see different contexts whenever we justify certain behavior, whenever we explain certain behavior. So yes, the looking objectively is one major skill that psychology teaches you.
So, what got you interested, beyond obviously all the great things that we are learning and we want to share? What got you interested in psychology initially?
That's a very tricky question, because I myself do not know how this started. But I did not know anything about psychology back in my high school, because we do not talk about psychology or mental health, and we did not talk about psychology and mental health then as well. So I had no idea that there's a subject called psychology. But in my gap year after high school, I met few people who were interested in psychology, and I was always interested in Sherlock Holmes. And you know how Sherlock Holmes is. I was always interested in observing people, and then trying to be curious about something, or the causes or reasons behind any kind of behavior. And then I realized, okay, this is my subject, this can be my subject. So this internal interest, or internal nature of being curious, and my internal interest to learn more about observation, and my interest of working with people, because I always wanted to be counselor back in my high school, when I knew that there is a field called counseling. So I think that all revolved around to justify my interest of coming to this field, psychology. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think that's such a interesting quality. And I feel like a lot of people who study psychology is, we want to understand other people. We want to understand what motivates people. And I think for me, it's a similar story, just by virtue of being a little younger to you. I think by the time I was in high school, psychology was, and disclaimer, definitely I was in New Delhi, which is a big city. So I think that really matters, at least in the education system here. If you have access to a bigger city, you hopefully, I think this subject is now being taught in smaller cities as well. I was able to take it in 11th and 12th grade in high school, and I had such a wonderful teacher. I'm friends with my psychology teacher still, because of how incredible, and she was pretty young too. So like it was, it's still growing. So I took psychology mostly because I didn't understand myself a lot of the times, to be honest. For me, to understand, why did I do that? Like, why did I do this to this person? Why did I choose to do it this way? I was just kind of somebody who's very easygoing, and used to not think so much about how I'm affecting other people and how they're affecting me in our everyday actions. So I think that's what really got me interested, and definitely like trying to solve the mystery of how people's minds work. And what I really learned is there's so many different ways in which a person's mind works. So I think if you are someone who loves math, you probably will do well, but there's no definite answer in psychology. Would you say that?
Yeah, I completely, I mean, second that, Aishwarya, because we don't have definitive answer, because we think everyone is different, everyone is unique, everyone is, I mean, single individual. So we need to dig into the context they are in. We need to dig into the social structure they are in, or maybe upbringing they had, or so many other reasons. So we cannot give a definitive answer towards any behavior. And I'm also interested to understand your reasoning behind studying psychology. That is very, very nice, Aishwarya. So do you understand yourself better now after studying psychology?
Yes, I do 100%. So it's study of psychology and therapy combined. So both of those paths have helped me understand my motivations better. Like we were talking about, psychology is definitely very scientific, but by understanding the different multiple ways in which people are shaped, right? A lot to do with your childhood, definitely. So how you were raised, who were the main forces in your life teaching you things, where are your learnings coming from as a human being, right? It's just X equals Y. And then building on top of that, like some of the things that I've engaged in research with, body image is something that I struggled with as a teenager a lot. And I think a lot of girls do because of the culture we live in. So it gave me the space to ask the questions I wanted to. Like, why? Why do I have to think about my body as not being enough? And why, for example, I've always been very interested in language and how we learn languages. And I actually learned German in university. So I'd never studied German before. I took 4 years of it. I lived in Germany for some time, and now I speak German, and everybody's so confused how I learned German at such a late age. So just the fact that I grew up speaking two languages, so English and Hindi, here in India, and then just being exposed to other languages. When I learned a language at 17 years old, I picked it up immediately. So just going off of understanding myself better. It's been such an interesting journey because psychology gave me that platform to ask the questions that I wanted to about myself and then the world.
True. This is self-explanatory, that how psychology works, how psychology helps us to understand and demystify all these mysteries of our mind and of our behavior.
What common myths do you know that surround psychology in Nepal? Like, what I know we kind of touched on this with the face reading and the palm reading, but what do you think people think about it in Nepal?
Definitely, the first one is psychologists are face readers and mind readers. That is the biggest myth which we have to debunk, and which I do in every class which I teach. The second is psychology. They consider psychology as the subject of common sense. We teach psychology as a part of art. Still, we teach psychology as a part of humanities and art. So that is another big myth which is still existent, because it is the subject of science, and wanting to make it subject of science is a huge step which we are wanting to do, and still people feel that it's a subject of common sense. And the other thing is, they consider psychology is the subject just to understand about mental illness or just to treat mental illness. They do not see beyond mental illness or beyond abnormal psychology. But there are so many fields of psychology, right? There are so many fields, starting from, I mean, industrial psychology to forensic psychology to sports psychology. There are so many other fields as well, but in Nepal it is just considered as the subject to do counseling or to study about abnormalities or mental illness. Yes, that is it. I mean, this pretty much define how psychology is taken and how psychology is misunderstood in context of Nepal. How it is in India, Aishwarya?
I think the knowledge around psychology is growing right now. I think just I want to say in my generation. So the generations before us, I think they still don't believe in psychology as being a real subject. A lot of the things that you said about Nepal do apply to India as well, just kind of seeing psychology as sometimes not a real subject. So because when you don't think about the concept of mental health, you don't think about the concept of your mind having health issues, you also don't think about the study that goes behind it. and also thinking of psychology as just like common advice, right? So like when people say to each other, oh, we'll just, I can give you therapy, I can give you advice.
True.
I really hate that because I'm like, you're not a licensed professional. People go through training in how to be non-judgmental and how to be open-minded and how to be a safe place for someone to work out their emotions. That's one of the things. And then also, as I was saying, not just in India, but also in my experience in the US, I feel like my professors always treated psychology as a science. Like everything was about data, 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 proof, proof, proof. Everything, when we write papers, we use citations, which means we use studies that have established certain evidence, about different psychological beliefs. So it's always about data, but people still refuse to see it as a science. And I, again, like it's really people like that get on my nerves because they talk about psychology as, again, like it's something that is a common knowledge, commonplace, and anybody can kind of figure it out. So we talked a little bit about what the myths in India and Nepal look like. And I think for the most part, it's the belief that people don't think it's a real science, or psychology is just a regular counseling. So what light would you have to shed on people who are still interested in psychology, right? Who still want to observe it as a career path? What would a career in psychology look like if they chose to study it?
I think psychology is a very, very diverse field, and I sometimes compare this with potato. Like, as potato goes with anything while we cook, it is something like that. We can study psychology, and we can choose our career path as we like, or as we are interested in. For example, I am teaching. I am also doing research. So research is a career path for psychology. And another is, if you are interested in talking to people, if you are interested in helping people, then counseling is another. Clinical psychology is another. If you are also interested in human resource or leadership, to be in leadership position or working in industrial setting, then industrial psychology can be another field. Likewise, there are so many other fields like sports psychology, forensic psychology, and then even it does not necessary to be psychology as well. Sometimes you can just study psychology, get the skills of active listening or empathetic or non-judgmental attitude and all the other various aspects of psychology, and use that as a skill in as a PR as well, as public relation officer as well. So the psychology is very open. So people can use the skill set that they gained, that they understood understood, and then use that subject in anywhere they would like. So I like to say it's like potato, so you can use with anything and it is still tasty. So you can use your skills in any career path you choose.
Absolutely. And I think all the different kind of avenues that you highlighted, it just goes to say studying and learning about human behavior can help you in so many different aspects of life. So, of course, you can make it your career path. You can be an academic like you are, doing your PhD, doing research, or you can just go back out into the field. So if you're still interested in business, if you're still interested in working for the government or doing policies and things like that, it informs you about the different ways in which people think and the different ways in which you can help them. So it's definitely something for people who are empathetic, something for people who want to focus on working and helping society. And I'm definitely in my early 20s still trying to figure out what that is going to look like for myself. So even speaking of myself as a psychology student, also as someone who was interested in research, I think this variety of things I can do is actually a little confusing for me sometimes, because I think that I never run out of things where I feel like I can apply my knowledge. So, for example, I'm definitely really interested in media, which is why we're doing this podcast. I'm really interested in media. I'm really interested in storytelling and what stories do other people have to tell. And also, I definitely in the future want to do something within policy formation. My understanding of seeing how people learn, seeing how people grow, the circumstances that help shape an individual, right? Like the healthy circumstances, you get a really good understanding of that. And I think that kind of knowledge is maybe not what is currently present in India. I don't think we pay attention to well-being at all. But I think if we start to incorporate these things in education, in policy, in mental health, and also NGO work, which we are doing already, it can really dramatically change lives.
True. So you can use psychology anywhere and you can contribute from your side. So having psychology as a career path is fulfilling and meaningful for you as a person as well, and for your professional career as well. I think that is what Ashura is trying to tell everyone. So let's just jump into this course, psychology.
Just come along on the ride. And just going off of what we're saying, it's for everybody. Why do you think if someone does choose to become a psychologist, which I remember this number, I Googled it a couple of years ago. I think in India at this time, there's only about 10,000 plus psychologists that are licensed. That is nothing for a population of like billions. So why do you think psychologists are important for any society? What value do we bring? Unfortunately, in our capitalistic society, everything comes down to value. So what's that value added behavior that we're bringing to society?
I do not know. I might give a very biased answer because being psychologist myself and studying psychology,
this is all biased. It's all psychology propaganda.
Yeah, I obviously see lots of value it is adding to the society or the community I live in, at least. But if you ask me, and if I have to be unbiased and say it objectively, like we were talking before, that it made us non-judgmental, it made us more empathetic. So that will be adding. If more people started studying about psychology, more people started studying or understanding people from different lenses or from different perspectives, so it will add empathy to everyone. It will help people to understand each other. It will help people to be objective when understanding about someone else's behavior, and then it will make our community or our society less chaotic, maybe, because people will be understanding others' perception or understanding other point of view, and then there will be less war. Obviously, there will be less violence, and then that will add value or meaningfulness to our society. So I see society as less chaotic, more loving, people doing good for each other, more and maybe better society if every one of us at least understand about human behavior, how it functions, and human mindset and how it works. So people will be more emotionally intelligent, maybe people will be more aware about whatever they are trying to do, or maybe more equipped with these skills of emotional intelligence. So I see lots of value being added because of psychology.
Definitely, it's important to zoom out and see who you are, in this universe. Not to get too spiritual, but to be honest, as we exist as human beings in society, sometimes our focus is so diverted from what truly matters is, of course, being good to each other, being good to our society, having strong communities that support each other. And that part about emotional intelligence is so important, because when we understand our own emotions and how they form within us, why they form within us, we can just be better, in our work, in our school, in everything else that we do, because we interact with human beings to do our work. So unless you're someone who just doesn't believe in being kind, which I think everybody in some form wants to be kind to somebody else. Maybe you just want to be kind to yourself, which we all forget to do. So I think that basic knowledge will definitely be very helpful. And I think it holds true for all kinds of social sciences. So studying about history, studying about sociology, studying about psychology. I think one thing that I really struggled with in my culture was people don't like the humanities. People don't like anything that, study. And I think it has those colonial, like roots to it, because industrialization, our parents' generation grew up in industrialization. So they were told, get a good technical job and that will assure you a living wage, which I understand is important with the high levels of unemployment that we have. But at the end of the day, it's not all about career when it comes to your quality of life, right?
True. It's not about career only, because at the end, people have to be, like you said, people have to be kind to themselves. And this is taught by the social sciences. To put this in perspective is, I don't think physics or chemistry will teach us to be kind, or teach us to be empathetic, teach us to be non-judgmental, and teach us to live, right? So social sciences are very essential.
Absolutely. And that's why I believe, hopefully, one day, I would like to help formulate a holistic education. So, of course, the sciences are important to understand the material world around us, but how we function as a society and how we choose to interact with our material world is through the social sciences, is through understanding our collective history, is through understanding how we interact with each other. And to me, that's just so interesting, because human beings are so complex, our minds are so complex, and we still don't know enough about the brain, even after all these imaging technologies that we have today.
True.
So, yeah, so that's, I guess, the end of our psychology propaganda episode, but mostly us kind of sharing our insights on psychology, on why it has been meaningful to us.
I think we are not inviting people to study psychology, change their career path, and then focus on psychology only. We are just wanting everyone to understand that it matters. Psychology matters. Understanding people's behavior, understanding people's mindset matters, and it matters to you yourself. So please make sure you understand, you study, or at least go through certain theoretical insights, certain perspectives of psychology. It will come handy. It will be helpful.
Absolutely. And if you are just starting your journey, we're on the social medias. We do post a lot of information on our Instagram page, our Facebook page. So if you're just learning, you want to interact, you want to learn more about just basic psychology initiatives, because we do all of our programs for the regular public. And for our Nepali listeners, we do sessions in Nepali as well. We do sessions in English as well. So don't hold back. We want you to be a part of this love and light that we are trying to spread as well. So thank you for tuning in to this episode, and we will see you next time.